live from New York here at Hadoop World. I'm here with John Gray of Facebook. John, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
So you've been here and you gave a couple of talks on HBase. Can
Correct.
you tell us a little bit about HBase, your involvement, and some of the things you talked about?
Sure. So I've been working with HBase for about 3 years, originally as part of a startup that I founded. Now I'm working at Facebook on HBase stuff. And the 2 talks I did, the first one was about basically what we've done with HBase at Facebook for the past 2 years, mostly focused on the actual use cases and the decision-making process that went behind how we actually ended up using HBase versus, MySQL or Cassandra or some of the other things out there. And then I dug into all the different use cases. So Facebook Messages, which is a big service we have that's in production on HBase, Puma, which is our real-time analytics platform, ODS, and also talking about putting our user and graph data in HBase, which is the project I'm working on right now.
And so for people who aren't familiar with HBase, where does that fit into the general big data ecosystem, and what does it do?
So Hadoop is really about offline batch processing. HBase is about adding kind of random read-write access on top of that and enabling more transactional and online applications. So HBase supports caching and it supports indexing and things like that, so you can get good random read performance, that something that Hadoop just doesn't give you. So basically we're actually using HBase now to replace MySQL for some of our new applications. So Messages, for example, it was on MySQL. The new product, which was going to have even stricter requirements and more scale, we decided to use HBase instead of MySQL. Pretty much because really, really, really scalable and really good at write-dominated workloads.
I think I saw an article where it said that you were saying that while there's advantages to HBase over MySQL, you still are not tossing out MySQL yet.
Never. I mean, it'll never be that way. But the first thing I always say is MySQL has a 25-year head start on HBase. So they've been around a really long time. But the interesting thing is now that we're actually kind of up against MySQL directly, it's really kind of brought to light exactly what HBase needs to do to be that level of database. And so we're working on stuff like snapshotting and backups and obviously just the availability and usability and all that kind of stuff. So it's cool because it's really driving us and it gives you some really good competition to say, this is kind of our yardstick, this is where we need to be, and that's really what we're working on now.
And how big is the community for it?
It's growing. We have, I think, more than 10 committers now. One really cool thing, so the second talk I did was called the HBase Roadmap, and I was just talking about kind of what the HBase community is like, who's in it, how it's developed over time. And one of the things I pointed out, which I really like about HBase, is we don't have a dominant company. Facebook is becoming that dominant company, but we were really late to it. And so it's actually all the other guys who have been kind of the dominant forces in the community. So with no kind of massive leading company, it's been very democratized, and it's grown up along all these individual companies and their use cases.
So where are the other committers? How many committers do you guys have?
So Facebook actually, as of like this past week, has 4 committers now. So when I came to Facebook, I was already a committer, and then we got another one a few months after, and we just invited 2 more guys who have been, they've been working with HBase now for about 2 years. So that's the Facebook guys. 2 of the main committers, Michael Stack, who's the project lead, and John Daniel Cryans are both at StumbleUpon, who have done a lot of HBase work. There's another group of committers at Trend Micro. They build kind of platforms on top of Hadoop and HBase. And now we have other companies that are kind of coming up. So Salesforce.com now has a new committer, and they've started to do a lot of contributing. Huawei actually has a new committer now, and they're doing a lot of stuff. eBay, they don't have a committer yet, but we're hoping that they start to do a lot of contributing. So we'll see.
So when you talk about health of the community, you talk about committers, also patches. Where do most of the patches come from? Or is it pretty all over the place?
I mean, I think, personally speaking, the HBase code base and the fact that it's Java make it so it's fairly easy to contribute. And so we do actually see a lot of kind of random contributors who come in and say, oh, I needed this, and so I just kind of made it, and here's the patch. So that does happen. But what I'd say is development comes in waves as new companies and new contributors are launching something. there's this wave of development as this fell down and this broke and we need this feature and that feature. And so there'll be 2 or 3 guys show up from some company, drop a bunch of patches, then HBase is working for them and they kind of move on, right? So there's a lot of that where it kind of ebbs and flows, and the new entrants come in and make a lot of noise and make things work the way they kind of need them to work. But now it's pretty kind of consistent around Facebook, StumbleUpon, Trend Micro guys. That's very consistent contributions. And now Salesforce, eBay, and Huawei, these guys are really coming up and starting to do a lot more stuff.
Sounds pretty healthy. And then, so just to close with, what are you looking forward to, say, in the next year with HBase? What would be some cool features or functionality?
I think the main goal for us, maybe not this year, but definitely next year, is usability. And HBase is in a point now where it's an engineer-driven technology, meaning you have to have engineers to drive it. And that's not the case for MySQL. MySQL, any kind of DBA, doesn't necessarily have to be a coder or developer of MySQL, can run it. And there's tools in place and documentation and all different kinds of stuff. And we'd really like to create the HBase DBA. I'd really like to be able to have a company use HBase without having somebody develop HBase. And I think that's the path that we're on, and that's going to help really, really widen the net about what types of companies, not just tech companies at Facebook scale, can actually adopt HBase.
Awesome. John Gray, thank you
Cool.
so much.